Many guests have shared generational stories of growing up with racing or coursing greyhounds. In this episode, we meet a Greyhound man made from scratch. Harry Jennings joins us to talk about his years of education in the breed. Next on Greyhound Nation. This is Greyhound Nation, episode 51, recorded July 13th, 2025. Harry Jennings, Becoming a Greyhound Man. Greyhound Nation is a podcast for Greyhound enthusiasts produced by Greyhound enthusiasts. To learn more about our show and its hosts, visit our website at greyhoundnation.dog. That's greyhoundnation.dog. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Greyhound Nation podcast. I'm Michael Burns. Now, here's your host, John Parker.
Thanks, Michael, and welcome back, Greyhound lovers. Our guest for this episode is a longtime Greyhound friend. Harry and I just were trying to figure out when we met. We believe it was 1996 at a lure coursing meeting. Harry, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I've really been looking forward to this.
Well, let's jump right in and tell us about where you began your journey to becoming a student of the Greyhound breed.
I kind of came into it sort of backwards from a lot of people. My knowledge of the breed. I grew up in a dog household. The first recorded of picture of Saint Harry of the dogs. I was about 3 and petting one of my grandfather's collies that was actually taller than me, but I didn't have greyhounds growing up. And when I was in grad school, I read a good bit of French medieval manuscripts and came across descriptions of coursing from 12th and 13th century French manuscripts and thought, oh, that's cool. I wonder exactly what a lévrier looked like. And then realized, oh, that's just greyhound. That's all that means. And then began to learn a little bit more about the breed. And then in 1990, leaving grad school, my friend Lauren Lee, who I was my housemate for 3 or 4 years, decided that she wanted to get a greyhound and got Charlie, and I ended up Charlie and I traveled the country together lure coursing. So that's how I started. Actually began from the literature and then worked backwards rather than getting the dog and then working back into the literature.
Yeah. Where did Charlie come from and what was his registered name?
Charlie, his AKC registered name was Mr. Charlie Told Me So. But his NGA registered name was Westhock Charlie. And he had run at, he was bred by John Waltrip and owned by John Waltrip. He was out of an Australian sire World Classic. So he was very closely bred to Timley, the great Australian dog, and looked a lot like Timley. And Charlie had run at Naples Fort Myers down in Bonita Springs and had been a reasonably good race dog, and came through an adoption program in Philadelphia. And the reason that he ended up with a different AKC registered name is his tattoos were backwards. And fun fact, the NGA does not record litter number and month and date. That's not how their database was set up. It might be different now. It's set up as left ear, right ear. And so when I would call into, and I did 2 or 3 times, called into the NGA offices, okay, I think I've got his numbers right, and would, okay, his left ear is, oh, no, that's his right ear. Well, I'm a little bit dyslexic, and I have difficulty with my left and my right, so it's like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I'm backwards, sorry. Well, no, I was actually reading his left ear as his left ear, and it was actually our mutual friend Paul Beither, who, for those of you who have, may have known Paul, he passed away a few years ago. But Paul called Gary Guccione and said, "Yeah, I'm trying to find out anything about this dog." And Gary looked it up, and said, "Ah, that's why he's had problems. Numbers are backwards." So he'd already been registered as Mr. Charlie Told Me So for quite a while, and then we found out he was Westhock Charlie.
Yeah.
And talked to John Waltrip, and John was He's just an old farmer in Oklahoma, and he said, "Well, is he doing okay?" And I said, "Yes, sir. We're lucky to have him." And I said, he's lure coursing now, and he said, "Well, is he doing well?" And I said, "He's the number one dog in the country, sir." And he said, "Yeah, I remember him. He's a good dog." So,
Well, who made the Greyhound choice? Was it Lauren or you?
it was her actually, because Charlie was going to be her dog, and then Charlie decided he was my dog, and then actually in old age he decided he was Lauren's mother's dog because he would lay down on her bed, and she would feed him roast a chicken for him and feed him the chicken by hand. So in his retirement, he decided he was Fern Key's dog.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, that was so that's how I ended up, becoming a dog man, becoming a Greyhound man was because of Charlie, and so Lauren Laurie started it. So
Had you known anything about Greyhounds? Had you done any study before you acquired Charlie, or was it just kind of a happenstance and lucky choice?
Laurie had done a lot, and I knew about the history of the medieval history of coursing, but not that much about the modern breed. And I did know that the Waterloo Cup still existed, that there was modern coursing, and growing up in Georgia, go down to Panama City as a kid, and always wanted to go to Ebro, but back in the old days you had to be 18 just to enter the track grounds. But I remember driving by Ebro and the Greyhound neon, and when you're 7 years old, that's just really cool, particularly when you love dogs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Ebro is not a great track, not a great place to be, but for a 7-year old, just the idea of neon lights and greyhounds was enticing.
So when you got Charlie, how old were you? Had you ever seen a Greyhound race? Had you been old enough to get to a
I
race?
don't know that I'd been to a racetrack. I'm not sure that I did. Uh, but I was in my, what, I guess 23, 24, something like that. Yeah, 24, I guess. So I may have been to Ebro or to Sanford, Orlando, at some point, but then after, getting to know about the breed and getting to know about his background and his, sort of his cultural history, how greyhounds grow up and how they act on the track, and how they're treated. I ended up getting becoming friends with Paul Beither actually on the old AOL Greyhound server, Greyhound discussion
Yeah, the
group.
old Greyhound L, was that the one?
Actually,
Yeah.
before Greyhound
Oh,
L.
really?
So
Okay.
Paul and I left AOL to go over to Greyhound L,
Yeah.
which was just getting going. I think that was about the time Linda Adame started administering it, and but I got to know Paul, and got to spend a lot of time down at Derby Lane especially, but Derby Lane in Tampa and Sanford, Orlando, and at Derby Lane got to meet some of the old guard, like Sonny Alderson, who started, literally was carrying dogs into the track for his uncle Hiley at in the 20s.
Yeah.
So people that had been there from the beginning, and getting to know racing from the people that had been there from the beginning.
Yeah. So how did you get into lure coursing? How did you find out about it?
I really don't know. I think that and I'm pretty sure that was me that found out about it, that did the digging, and learned about it, because I knew about coursing, and I had so from, again, medieval French texts, and we don't, obviously we don't have hares in the eastern United States, but I found out about lure coursing. Oh, that sounds really interesting. And we decided spend a weekend, went up to Darien Lakes for Lake Country lure coursers. And this is in the fall of '92. So Charlie had been with us for 18 months.
Yeah.
And I remember at Darien Lakes, the field was sort of in a bowl, and you parked down on a little bit behind the brow of the ridge and walked up, and there were picnic tables that overlooked the bowl that the course was in.
This was New
Uh,
York, right?
yep.
Yeah, yeah,
At the State Park, not at
yeah.
the fairgrounds or amusement park, but the Darien Lake State Park. So great, great place to go coursing. I don't know why it's not used anymore, but it's not. But we come up to the brow of the ridge and have Charlie on lead, and oh, Charlie, is this something you'd be interested in? And I remember the first course we saw was a brace of Salukis. Don't remember whose Salukis they were, but the Salukis go by and look at Charlie, and Charlie is eating the picnic table. He wants to get at it. He's ready to go. And we said, okay, Charlie. And he ran a practice that day, entered him in the meet the next day, and it could have fed the dog gravel. He was next level as a lure courser. It was like watching Gretzky play hockey or Jordan play basketball. You didn't have to know anything about the sport, and I didn't know anything about the sport. But you could tell Charlie was playing down from a higher league.
How old was he at the time?
He was already 3.5 or 4 when he
Yeah.
started. He
Yeah.
was a September '89, so he was 3. I
Yeah.
guess he was he was a September. Can't remember September '88 or September '89 whelp. So he got started late and went on to be the number one ASFA dog in the country in '93. Won the II in '93 and '95. Won the AKC national championship in '94, and was the number one dog combined AKC ASFA in '94. And he missed 4 months with injury in '94 and still came back and was the number
Yeah.
one dog in the country.
That's a pretty good, nice kudo, because back in those days, there was a pretty good greyhound field. Lots of greyhounds competing back then. Not so many now, unfortunately, but back then there was a goodly number, as I recall.
Yeah, as I remember in '93, I think we had 16 or 17 dogs running at the II, and in '95, and that was the one January '95 in Lamarck, Texas, and it rained. Oh Lord, did it rain! And as I recall, that was 19 or 21 dogs in
Yeah,
that
yeah.
in that run in that meet, and
Well,
yeah,
what do you attribute his success to? I take it that at the beginning you didn't know a lot about conditioning and so forth.
And I learned about conditioning very quickly, and that was one of that was really how I got to know Paul Beither, was just trying to learn and trying to find out what's best for him. And we tried to, I did a good bit of road work with Charlie, that I would ride my bicycle and he'd jog along, and that was one of the things that I'd read, that that English coursing, not I didn't know much about park coursing, but open field coursing, that they would take dogs out for road work. Um, but yeah, he was tremendously well built. A little bit, if you look at a picture of Timley, again, he looked a lot like his great grandfather. He looked a lot like Tiger. But where Timley was very straight, well, not very straight, but pretty straight in the front, Charlie had a little bit more angulation in the front, had the good angulated rear, the old style Oklahoma back, where he looked like a 2x10 from the rear, just a flat, wide, muscular back. And Charlie he weighed about 72 pounds, and when he would sometimes when he was at his best, and I remember at the II in '93 and at a gang meet in '93 or 4, '93, because he was injured in '94. He came off the field with grass stains on his shoulder, because he would, instead of slowing up to turn, he would just drop his shoulder all the way down. He looked like a dirt bike. He would just drop so low and make the turn at speed, and it was astounding to watch.
Yeah, yeah. Was he one of these that was just an average racer but just found his niche in lure coursing?
Yeah, and I think I can't. I looked up his racing record again, and it's not on Greyhound data anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm only working from memory. But he ran middle grade, never broke particularly well, but he had tremendous endurance. He could turn around. He would be mad at me if he didn't run 3 times because he knew I run for best of breed. And so when people would forfeit to us for breed, he'd be angry at me. If we went home, he wouldn't speak to me for 2 or 3 days. Uh, that he was and when it in the fall when it got cool and he knew it's coursing season, he wake me up at 4 o'clock. So hey,
Sounds
you
like
can
we have a Greyhound guest there.
yes.
We'll get to her a little. Is that Blossom? We'll get to her a little
Yep,
bit
yeah,
later.
that's Blossom has things to say. She usually
Uh,
does.
so as part of your becoming a student and doing your research, you hopped on the early days of the internet to learn more about greyhounds, and you met Paul Byther. Had the privilege of meeting Paul a couple of times in the flesh, but I met him, of course, on the Greyhound L, and he was quite the he had quite a bit of chutzpah, as I recalled, because he was really one of the sole defenders of the
Mhm.
racing community.
Mhm.
There were so many people back then in the adoption community that they basically, it was the old classic case of believing what they read and not really doing much research on their own. And so, bless his heart, Paul had to suffer the slings and arrows of any number of people on there, but he stood right up and was a really
Mhm.
good resource for people wanting to get into, what's a greyhound's racing life actually like? What do you do to condition? He had his own. He was a trainer for who, as I recall. I'm trying to remember.
He'd worked for I think all of the Aldersons at one point or another. He was in G.A. Alderson's kennel and Eddie Alderson's kennel.
Yeah.
That he'd worked for LaRussa, and I think that the last place that he was at that I remember was working with Rodney Cooley at Charter. Um, I can't remember if he ever worked with Wayne Ward or not, but he and Jay Graham, who was Wayne's trainer down in St. Pete, they were very close friends, and
Yeah.
I ended up with my dogs at Wayne Ward when I had racing dogs. But
Well, let's get into that. I take it was Charlie. Was there a second or third greyhound that was an adopted greyhound, or did you get
so,
quickly into owning a racer?
so the next dogs that I had were actually from Paul, and Paul had gotten into a kennel dispute with he had a litter, and Kelly, my dog, became my dog. Soloist Kelly was out of a litter that Paul and Ruth had bred, and there they were in a kennel dispute. And when you lease a dog in the United States, it's very difficult to get the dog back because technically it is a lifetime lease. But you can terminate the lease by selling the dog. And Paul said, I need to get my dogs out. I'm not happy with the trainer. The kennel owner will not move the dogs that are at this kennel. And he was at Sanford, Orlando, I believe, but he was at whatever Orlando track was. It might have been at Seminole. And uh, the kennel owner said, "No, you signed a lease. I'm not going to let your dogs go." And Paul said, "I want to give you Kelly." And technically, I bought Kelly for $1. Um, and he's a good dog. He could still race. Please don't race him. Take him as a lure coursing dog and keep him. And I said, "Yep, you've got it." And showed up with to the kennel in Orlando with Paul and a sheriff's deputy and a bill of sale, and said, "I'm here to get my dog." And I just acted like I'm just some dumb Yahoo. No, you don't have a lease. Here's the bill of sale. It's my dog.
Did he give him up?
Yeah. And the next week, Paul got the other 4 or 5 dogs that were in the litter that were at that kennel. They were all released
Yeah.
because he just didn't think that Paul was going to walk away from a $14,000 investment that he had in that litter.
Yeah.
And yeah, I showed up, bill of sale and sheriff's deputy. Yep, I'm come to get my dog. So
And I think
so
Kelly was the
that
dog
was
you were running when we first met in lure coursing. We believe we figured out that was sometime in
yeah.
'96 in Thomasville, Georgia, at the old Appalachie Coursing Club, now no longer in existence, sadly. But
Mm-hmm.
that was a nice field, and we had always had a nice greyhound entry
Mm-hmm.
there in South Georgia.
Yeah, and they also ran at a field down towards Live Oak somewhere. But I remember that Thomasville field as being really nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, that I'm pretty sure that's the first time we met. But I remember Kelly Kelly was running pretty well at that point, and then I took Paul and Ruth ended up just kind of had too many dogs in the house, and they asked me to take another one out of the litter, take Blue. And so I had the two brothers, or two of the brothers, had Kelly and Blue for the rest of their lives. But then in '98, I had a little bit of extra money, and at that point I was going down to Derby Lane as often as I could, and I decided I wanted to buy a dog, and joined the NGA, and had was getting the review and going through pedigrees and going through all of the advertisements, and found Flying Highball Call Transfer was the breeding from Kenny Bealey, and Kenny had too many pups on the ground at the time, and so he was selling the pups for only $400 or $500 a piece. I can't remember what it was, but it was the kind of breeding that at that time you would expect to be seeing the puppies for 1,000 or 1,200. But Kenny he had more dogs than he needed at that point, and I talked to Paul Byther, and Paul said, "Well, talk to Mark Stavros because Mark really knows about that breeding." And Mark told me, "Tell Kenny you want the biggest, blackest pup, and don't let him give you a random A through J pick. You want the biggest, blackest dog."
Did he say why black?
That with Flying Highball puppies, for whatever reason, the black dogs tend to run better. And Mickey did. I bought Mickey. He went to Artis Reed up in Oklahoma for schooling, and ended up at Derby Lane and ran 3 seasons at Derby Lane Grade A.
Wow.
And
Was Paul
Mickey
his
was
trainer? Did Paul train him?
No, he was Jay Graham for Wayne Ward. And Mickey was not a great dog, but he was a very good dog for a very long time.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of great dogs that have run at Derby Lane that can't say they ran three seasons Grade A.
Yeah, yeah, uninterrupted.
Yeah,
yeah, that's great.
He had one injury that took him out about 2 weeks, and then of course the injury that ended his career. And at that point, when he broke his. This is another just fun story about the way that trainers feel about their dogs. The beginning of, I guess this is the 2001 season, maybe the 2001 season. Mickey broke his leg, and then the next week, Jay had 2 other dogs go down with major injuries, and I think one of them they put down at the track, and then I think the other one that did go back to Abilene, but and Jay had never had, and Jay, he'd been training dogs at that point for 15 or 20 years. He'd never had 3 major breakdowns in a season, much less in 10 days. And they had there were a lot of problems at the kennel, and I couldn't come and get Mickey after his surgery. And I said, can you take care of him? Can you hang on to him at the kennel? And Jay said, absolutely, there's no problem. I said, well, yeah, I'll talk to Wayne about it. And he said, you can talk to Wayne if you want to, but this dog stays here. He's fine as long as you need him. And he actually moved Mickey to the number 1 kennel. And most kennels that in the U.S., the way that they arrange the kennels, usually the top dogs have sort of premier places. When you walk in, you can see the dog's kennel there. And Mickey moved into the number one kennel with his broken leg. And so he was the first dog that anybody would see in the morning, and he would come out of the kennel and he'd bounce around. And Jay said he kept our spirits up. He saved the kennel because Mickey on 3 legs was just so happy to be there, and he just had such a great attitude that and Jay said, he really kept me going for 3 or 4 months there when we were having a hard time.
Yeah.
And uh, and after I think it was about 5 months after he broke his leg before I was able to bring him home, and brought him home. And Jay said, anytime you have any problems and he needs to stay somewhere, call me. He can come to my house. He can stay in the kennel, whatever makes him happy.
That's great. Did he make a full recovery when you got him home?
He was never able to lure course. He was never able to straight race. He always had a little bit of a limp. The other goofy thing about Mickey, and people talk about, oh, greyhounds can't, they're so abused. They're not taught how to do stairs, which is ridiculous. Why would you teach a dog how to do stairs if there aren't stairs? Why would you do that? But at Derby Lane, there are stairs. And I don't know if you were ever behind the scenes at Derby Lane, but
I was at the kennel compound a couple of times, but I don't remember stairs. Where were they?
yeah. So from the weigh-in and the Jenny pit downstairs to the second weigh-in, and then going out to the track, to the lead out, there was a set of stairs that the Jenny pit was actually on a different level. And it was two flights of concrete stairs. And so Mickey he did stairs every 5 days for his entire racing life.
Yeah.
When he got home, he freaked out and wouldn't do stairs. Sometimes he'd go halfway up the stairs and then remember, oh, I can't do stairs. And he'd just start crying, and I have to go and pick him up and take him down, take him up. And I called Jay and I said, because I knew that there'd been a dog, Hoosier Country. Don was his call name. Hoosier Country was a very good stakes dog for Wayne Ward. And Jay used to have to carry him upstairs because he wouldn't go, and the state would allow him to come back, pick him up at the Jenny pit, because usually you're not allowed to touch the dogs in the Jenny pit, but they'd let Jay carry him upstairs because none of the leadouts wanted to carry a 74-pound dog up 2 flights of stairs. And he did this every day for 140 starts, however many Hoosier Country had. He ran 3 seasons as well. And so I asked Jay, did you carry Mickey upstairs? He's like, no, I wouldn't carry Mickey upstairs. He'd run up the stairs. He'd drag you. He loved it. He was and so, well, screwy dog won't go upstairs anymore. So that, the one dog that I absolutely know did stairs all the time, once he gets home, no, not going to do stairs anymore. And
did he finally figure it out?
No, he never did. That was just part of the silliness of being Mickey.
So that was your first racing greyhound. What did you do next?
So I had a couple of other race dogs. And Joan ended up being a non-runner. She was extremely fast, but she interfered. And Wayne Ward was funny when he called me about her. Said, you got to come get your dog. And she had interfered in Oklahoma when Artis was raising her, and Artis said, I think I've got it out of her, but and I told Wayne, Artis has had some issues with her interfering, so if she interferes, we're not, there's no point in trying to reschool her. And she'd been running well in trials at Abilene, and Wayne was thinking this is probably a Derby Lane dog. She might go to Hollywood, but definitely going to go to a top track. And the day that Wayne called me to say, you got to come get your dog, she's not going to go. She had broke from the box first. There was a 4-dog trial. They get halfway around the first bend, and she pulled up, smashes the other dog the closest dog into the outside rail. That was very, very funny. And then runs in, and just, lights out down the back stretch. Opens up like a 6-length lead. And then between the third and the fourth turn, same thing. Just pulls up, waits for somebody to catch up with her, smashes them into the rail, and then runs off, because Joan was all about doing funny things, and she thought that was much funnier than just chasing the bunny. And Wayne said, the damn thing was, there were 100 dogs that ran at Abilene yesterday, and she was the 4th fastest time. she twice pulled up to let other dogs catch her, and she still ran the fourth fastest time. But nope, she's interfering. Can't take her. So,
Well, did
she
you try her at lure coursing, or did you figure that if she interfered on the
no,
track, she'd interfere on the field?
I didn't, and I really wish I had it, but that was about the time I went broke, and so I lost my company. I had financial problems and wasn't able to get out and take my dogs out. And so they were the two litter sisters that I had were the last dogs, last race dogs that I had a few more, had another couple of sets of adopted dogs until here in the last few years have been able to get back into dog sports, both on the track and in lure coursing. And I do think Joan would have been a really good lure courser. I feel bad about that, about not getting her out.
Well, before we get too far toward the present day, another place we were together, in addition to the lure coursing fields of Thomasville, Georgia, and Chester, South Carolina, and other places. We also stood together on the fields of Alt Car for the Waterloo Cup. I think we've decided we were there together in 1999. What took you over there? How did you go about deciding it was time to go see the Waterloo Cup?
I really I'd really wanted to, and I remember one time showing video of Charlie to Mick Darcy, the Irish trainer who was he bred Kenlick Bray. So Mick and Mick won all kinds of stuff. He'd just come into Florida at that point, and his wife and daughter did a lot of coursing and still do coursing in Ireland. So he'd never had a dog at Waterloo. I don't think he ever did. But he was grew up coursing. He's from County Tipperary, and I showed him this video of Charlie, and I remember him saying, "I'm not saying that he'd win, but he absolutely deserves to be on the field with Crafty Tessie." And so that was that kind of sparked it. I really want to go to Altker. And I don't remember how I ended up on that trip in '95. We stayed at the we stayed at the
Prince
Royal
of Wales or the Royal Clifton.
We stayed at the Royal Clifton.
Yeah,
we stayed at the Royal Clifton just down the street from the Prince of Wales, and I think you invited me, and I said, yeah, sure. And I had room on the credit card. I think it was that simple. and so I blame you for that, fantastic, once in a lifetime trip. That I'm so glad that I did. And I was thinking
you said 95, but I think it was 99. 98 was my first year, and I was so taken with it that I said, everybody that I know that has greyhounds that is involved in any greyhound sport needs to see this. So it was great to have you there. What was your reaction the first time you saw open coursing?
Well, it was cold. Little bit different from standing on the field in Thomasville in 2 degrees C with a 20-knot wind blowing off of the Irish Sea. But yeah, just the dogs were just absolutely amazing. And one of the things that really struck me, and I have thought about this as over the years. I lived in England in 2010, 2011, and so got to know English, the English societal norms a lot more over the years. And the most egalitarian place I've ever been in England was in that car park at the Waterloo.
Yeah.
The car park at Altker, there were 2 or 3 earls, not just nobility, but earls there. The head of the Royal College of Surgeons, and you had Irish dogmen that were sleeping in their van, that if their dog didn't at least make the final 16, they probably weren't going to have a place to sleep other than their van for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
And everybody, it was a great leveler that everybody was there for the dogs, and that was something that really struck me, that and I really began to appreciate more when I lived in England over a decade later. Uh, but and everybody's interest in and care for the dogs, and also just the number of people cheering for the hare. I thought that was just really interesting because there were some really great hares that year, and people were disappointed if the hare got caught.
Yeah.
It's like, that's, or a hair get flicked, and it's like, oh, that's terrible. That was a great hair. We're gonna miss him. Um, so those were a couple of things that really struck me. And I remember that when the antis showed up and they were shouting class warfare slogans,
Yes.
and it was just like, do you have any idea who's here? It's not not a bunch of toffs, that
Yeah.
yes, you had that, but again, you had people that were literally living in their vans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but it was, white girls from the suburbs didn't see that at all.
Right.
And that was uh, uh, very disappointed in the quality of the antis and the quality of the antis arguments.
Yeah, Harry, attending the Waterloo Cup was a real game changer for me in terms of how I viewed the breed and my interest in it, just because of the history that place
Hmm.
represented. And I'd never seen open coursing before I went in '98, and it was a combination of that. The dogs were unlike what I had seen before. We all know the difference between the typical racing build and the typical coursing build, and just the friendliness of the people. They were there for a day of good sport. There was no titles. There were no points. It was just good crack, as they call it. And
Hmm.
we were kind of a novelty because of our American accents, and a lot of the British folks went out of their way to welcome us and ask us if we were enjoying ourselves and so forth. And then the kicker was Clarissa Dixon Wright of the famous Two Fat Ladies cooking show.
Hmm.
She was a great country woman and loved country sports like coursing, and she was always there. She was a great champion of coursing, and so she heard us, and she had a show at the time. I think the Two Fat Ladies show had ended, and she had another show
Yeah.
called Clarissa and the Countryman, where she
Hmm.
went around the countryside with a Sir Johnny Scott, a friend apparently of then Prince Charles, and
Uh-huh.
she and he would roam the countryside looking for country sports. So he was there with her. In any event, she heard our American accents. You were standing there with us, and she came over and asked if she could interview us. And she
Hmm.
brings the camera crew over and so forth, and she interviewed us and just to ask us about our experience. And I doubt that she'd ever heard of lure coursing, but in any event, it was a fun little exercise. It's our 15 minutes of fame. You could still see it on YouTube today, and it was just a nice way to cap off that trip. You remember that?
Yeah, I got my 15 minutes of fame a couple of times there because when I lived in England in 2010, 2011, uh, I was interviewed for I can't remember what show it was, but it was something about women's football, and the person asked me, have you ever been on television before? I said, yeah, a couple of times. Said, well, this will be your first time in the UK, I'm sure. I said, no, I've been on BBC Scotland before. And he said, what? I brought it up on YouTube and showed it to him. He's like, oh, that's amazing. You met Clarissa Dixon Wright? Yeah.
So it was another sport. It was a human sport that took you to live in England for a year, not greyhounds.
Hmm. Yeah, I coached professional soccer for what, I guess I was in soccer for about 15 years, and I spent a year as first team coach for Preston North End women's team, and worked in the scouting department for Preston North End. And so I was actually in Preston for a year, and since then I've worked for a couple of different clubs. But I left football, uh, changed careers again, and work in finance now. So it's been 7 or 8 years since I've been in football. But
Did you
that's
take greyhounds with you? Did you have greyhounds at the time you moved?
I had just gotten Bark and Delray had just moved in with me, and I didn't take them to England. And so and I guess it's been about 6 months since we'd adopted them, that I actually 9 months, I guess, since I'd adopted them. Went to England. They stayed with my wife in then wife in the U.S. And when I came back, is very funny because Bark immediately, jumps up to the door and buries his head in me and wags and rubs and just great carrying on. Delray didn't recognize me. And so she hackles up and who's this strange man in my house, and barked, and then after Bark was 10, 15 seconds, she realized, okay, oh, 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 Bark, remember, this is Dad. I don't know if I need a dad. I'm not sure about Dad. And then Delray spent the next day or so not looking at me, not just not paying any attention to me, but intentionally not looking. Like
Giving
she
you the
would
cold
walk into the
shoulder.
room and turn her head so she could not see me. So I was being very intentionally not looked at. And then after about a day, she just came over apropos of nothing and just buried her head in my chest and said,
Yeah.
"Good to have you home."
Yeah.
So
Now, while you were in England that first time there, did you do anything Greyhound related?
no, and I was in Preston. I was in the Northwest, so I was only and actually I had friends that lived in Southport, so right down the road from Altkerr. But this, of course, is 6 years after, 6 years after the final Waterloo Cup, and most of the tracks in England are in the South, and so I didn't get to a track at all the year I was there. So I had never didn't have the opportunity to when traveling, down at Charlton or something like that, and then pop over to Romford or one of the other tracks in London.
What when you got back to the States, were you back into Greyhounds, or did you take a little break from Greyhound ownership for a time?
So I had I always had at least rescue God, cut that. At least retired dogs, and but I didn't have track dogs again until here just recently. And actually, my dog Heigl, who I got in 2017, and Heigl, he was one of those soul dogs, just one of those dogs that
He was American.
yeah,
Yeah.
and he's one of those dogs that you kind of are always going to be attached to. And I had gotten him. He was very young. He was 19 months old when I adopted him. One of the reasons that I really wanted a young dog was that I wanted to get back into dog sports, and I also was losing Bark was really hard for me, and so I just wanted a dog that would have a little longer lifespan. And the adoption agency was very happy that I was going to take Heigl, because he was a bit of a wild child. That at 19 months old, if you met him, you would think he was about 12 months old. He looked that way, but he also behaved that way. He was just a little wild. But I didn't was never able to get out to the coursing field with Heigl. I changed jobs. My girlfriend, my father died of cancer. My girlfriend had cancer. So just sort of life happened, and I wasn't able to get out to the coursing field with him until he was 7, and he was really quite good, and I felt really bad about that I didn't he enjoyed it so much and was good at it, and that I hadn't been able to get him out. But life happens.
Yeah. Now, at some point, you alluded to that. You got back into racing ownership, but this time on the British side of things. What made you decide to try a foray into the British racing instead of coming back to American racing?
The it it it's something different, but the NGA, American racing is as things have closed down, has become a little more inward looking, and I hadn't been a member of the NGA in a while. Uh, wasn't able to get a copy of the review to just look for puppies. So it's just easier to buy a dog in Ireland. And I kind of liked the idea of that, of having an Irish dog, and did my research, and um, found found a breeding that I liked, found a breeder that I liked, and bought Blossom. And at the time, prior to that, my sort of notion had been that once Heigl dies, I will probably just sell everything and go to sea, and just be done with it. And sometime in that 2022 21 period, I decided, no, I'm gonna live out my life on land. I'm not gonna go back to sea. I'm gonna stick with it. And so I bought Blossom, and then unfortunately I lost Heigl to cancer. He was from 6 weeks from initial symptoms to losing him. But Blossom didn't make it on the track. Was not running well at all. She had a little bit of a hip injury that never quite healed. That I was able to work on. I feel like her hip is fine now, but so I went over to England, and at that time she was in England. She started in Ireland. Went to England, and brought her home, and also have another English dog, Maddie, who ran 2 years. He just came home this spring, and now have another English dog, Dwayne, who is just starting his career at Yarmouth, and he's not quite 2 yet. So
Were all of these
so
dogs born in Ireland, and you decided to race them in England?
Blossom was Irish bred, and bought her as a puppy. Maddie is Irish bred, and I bought him as a dog. He had already had 8 or 9 starts when I bought him, so he was bought as a graded racer. And then Dwayne is actually English bred, which qualifies him for English bred open races. Don't know if he's ever going to reach that quality, but he's actually an English bred dog.
What made you, for the two Irish ones, what made you decide to race them in England as opposed to staying there and having them stay there in Ireland?
Um, I kind of had to. Didn't have a trainer that would take Blossom. That her breeder had said, she looks great, she's fine, she's running great, not going to be any problem. And then said, you got to come get your dog. She's no good. She's got to go to England. That not interested in having a graded dog. And as soon as it became apparent that she wasn't going to run A1 or A0, said, no, I don't want the dog here. So uh, I I got in touch with Jason Bloomfield. I'm almost positive, but through you, and because of the coffee syndicate, and got her over to England. And
How
um,
difficult, doing all this from the U.S., how difficult was it to make those arrangements long distance?
uh, about the same that it is moving a dog from Abilene to Southland, or any part of the country to the other that you're dealing with remotely. I think that with the Irish, it might have been a little bit more difficult because they're just not accustomed to having an American owner. And so I think I probably got charged a little bit more for a couple of things like transport. I think I paid 25 euro over the going rate. Yeah, 25 euro. It's not like I'm
Yeah.
gonna fly for 25 euro. So, but uh, uh, but uh, people are also finding people that you trust, like Jason Bloomfield, who's and Kelly Windebank, who mutual friends of ours, are just fantastic, and they run a great kennel. I love going and visiting them has been wonderful, and they just finding people that you trust. But that's also the case in the U.S.
Yeah.
That you have to find people that you trust. And I remember working with adoption groups, and hauling dogs out of Bonita Springs, and there were a lot of dogs that were stolen at Naples Fort Myers. That there were dogs that would just go there and they'd vanish. And I had taken a load out of there one time that I don't remember if this was back maybe 97, 98. There was a great internet uh, scandal uproar. Bob Mendheim, uh, uh, who by the way has just recently passed away. Bob Mendheim was in a kennel dispute with the track, and he said, "I'm going to pull all my dogs. I'm not going to renew my contract. I'm going to leave you in mid-season, in fact, and all my dogs are going to go to Palm Beach and Jacksonville if I don't get whatever it was." And I think it was over utilities or something. Anyways, um, and what was represented on the internet was he has 50 dogs that he's going to put down if we don't find him homes right away. And I said, I'll haul. I can't, I've got my trailer, so I can take 14 dogs easily, and I can take 24 dogs in a pinch. But I'll be there Friday with my trailer. So I show up, and I get 5 dogs. I thought you had 50 dogs that needed a place to be. Oh well, we could only get 5. Okay, where's the paperwork? Oh, you don't need paperwork. I said, yeah, I'm hauling dogs. I need the paperwork. They gave me the names of the dogs. That was
it. This is sounding familiar.
Yeah. Okay, sure. Oh, and we need you to stop in Orlando on the way up and pick up 2 other dogs. Okay. So I make this haul. And I'm going to an adoption program in Seneca, South Carolina. And I cannot remember the woman's name. She was fantastic. She was absolutely lovely. Have her phone number, and I'm calling her. I have a cell phone, and just not many people did in the late 90s, but I had a cell phone, and I call her 4 or 5 times from the road, and leaving message. I have your dogs. I'm coming. I'm on the way. 2 hours out. Whatever. And finally, she calls me back Sunday night when I'm about an hour out. Says, I had no idea. I'm not expecting any dogs. Well, these people had represented that A, all of these dogs needed a place. 2, that they had dogs ready to go. 3, that there was an adoption program in South Carolina that was ready for them. And none of that was true. Oh, fantastic. So I said, you know what? It's not your problem. It's my problem. If you can take these dogs, fantastic. If we're full up here at the kennel. Okay. It's my problem now. And the dogs lived in my backyard in the dog trailer for a week until this adoption agency in Seneca made room, and it was fantastic. They were lovely. But I start going through the dogs and realized 2 of the 5 dogs that were loaded at Bonita Springs still had lines. 2 of them were supposed to run, one on Saturday and one on Sunday, one on Monday. And I called Gary Guccione, who was then the
executive
director, I guess, at the National Greyhound Association. I said, Gary, I think I've got stolen dogs. And I told him who I had, and Gary said, don't worry about it. You acted in good faith. None of this is going to come back on you. And he knew the woman in South Carolina. This adoption agency said that she'll take care of it. She'll help you. Gary helped with her a little bit. Anyways, it all got straightened out. But that was one of the things that made me realize there have always been some bad people in dog racing, but there are some bad people in adoption too.
Basically, it was a piece of cake having racing greyhounds in the UK and finding a trainer and getting them transported was a piece of cake compared to what you'd
compared to what it is in the United. Yeah, because then for a year or two, I got calls from people, from NGA owners saying, I heard that you took dogs out of that you got some of the dogs out of Naples, and I said, yeah. Could you help me find my dogs? That people, owners that wanted their dogs back, and didn't know where they were, and because they knew that I had contacts down in Naples, and I said, I don't think there's anything I can do, but I'll try to find, and I say I had this list of names of dogs that had vanished out of Naples, Fort Myers, that I was calling around to try to find, if they'd ended up in an adoption program or sold off or whatever. And that was so. So yeah, dealing in England and Ireland is easier than that. So
Now, you've been over a couple of times, if I'm not mistaken, to see your dogs, meet with Jason, the trainer, and so forth. How's that? How does that differ from your experiences visiting the American kennels and American tracks?
The I don't like to use the word industry because we don't have a greyhound industry. We never did. It's not, it's very loosely organized. But greyhound racing in Ireland and in England it's different on each side of the Irish Sea, and it's all very different from what it is in the U.S. The tracks are they're not the same. 7 days a week, large scale operations with all the kennels on site. The track is just the track. There are no kennel facilities at any track, pretty much other than the Jenny Pit. There are a couple of tracks that do have a couple of kennels associated with them, but all of the trainers that are associated with the kennels, they might be, at 100 miles away,
Yeah.
and they drive in 2 or 3 times a week to bring dogs. It's in some ways it's more informal. You don't have lead outs that the trainers take the dogs to the boxes. So it's not track employees doing that the trainers are actually loading the dogs in. It's a little more it's almost a little more personal than it is corporate. I guess that's probably the word that I'm looking for, corporate rather than industry, that it is in the United States. And even the big operations in Ireland are much smaller than what the big operations were in the United States. And I was able to spend a day with Pat Buckley and his family, and the Buckleys are one of the largest breeding and sire operations, and they typically have around 20-25 stakes racing dogs. They don't keep graded dogs. They only go to stakes races. And that was really interesting being at their farm, because it was much smaller than what you'd see with Ronnie Beckner or Kay Smith or Bob Crossland, or any of the people that Kenny Bealey, any of the people that we know in the U.S. that might have 200, 300, 400 dogs on the property at any time. So it was very, very different, much more family oriented, much less corporate.
Yeah, yeah. Did you we had George Sell on talking about being a British owner, and he talked a little bit about Sundays where owners are invited to come and just spend some time with their dogs and have a cup of tea or a beer or whatever. Did you enjoy one of those while you were there?
No, I didn't. I wasn't there. I wasn't there on Sunday. The first Sunday I was over, we were in transit, and then the next Sunday we were flying on Saturday, so we had an extra day in case something went wrong. We'd have another day to be able to get the dogs, because when I flew Blossom out, I almost missed the flight. I had brought a crate with me. TSA, in their infinite wisdom, had taken the crate apart to inspect it when I went from the U.S. to England, and didn't put all the hardware back. Well, idiot that I am, I didn't assemble the crate in England because I didn't think about it, that that it had been cut open and then put back together by TSA. So at 5:20 a.m., with a dog who has met me less than 24 hours before, I'm putting the crate together at Terminal 4 at Heathrow and realizing I'm missing about 6 parts. And so...
And I know full well how nerve-wracking just the prospect.
Yeah.
When everything's working well, having brought a puppy or two or an adult over from England, you're sweating bullets, and
Hmm.
and if you have any difficulty at all, you don't know what you're going to do. So,
Yeah.
what'd you do for the missing hardware?
Well, if you're ever at Heathrow, if you've got problems, look for the purple jackets. The purple jackets don't work for the airlines. They work for the airport, and they're there to solve problems. And the purple jackets at Terminal 4 are rock stars. And they realized what the problem was. And it's like, okay, there's no way we can fix this. It's Sunday. Can't buy, you're not going to be able to buy another crate because nobody's going to be open. They called the what used to be the old quarantine facility, but they still take dogs as cargo through the where the quarantine facility was. They had a crate that somebody had left, and so I hustled over to the quarantine facility at Heathrow, grabbed this new crate, throw my old one in a dumpster, run back to Heathrow. The purple jackets take me through security, get everything straight. I run to the gate, have my ticket, and I couldn't see the loading gate for
Right.
the plane,
Yeah.
and so I wasn't sure if Blossom was on. And I'm almost in tears, John. I'm just really, like you say, it's harrowing at best. And Blossom had been a rock star through the whole thing. She
Yeah.
was just focused on me. It's like, are we okay? She knew I was dad.
Yeah.
She's an amazing little dog. But so I get on the plane, and I'm having trouble speaking to the purser because I'm trying to tell her I need to make sure my dog is on. And she grabs me by my jacket and pushes me up against the cockpit door and says, "You have something to tell me. You will tell me now." And I took a deep breath and I said, "I've had problems with the luggage, doesn't matter what it is, but I have no other luggage other than my dog. If my dog is not on this aircraft, kick me off the plane. You're not going to have to take any luggage out of the, just don't, I do not want to fly to Holland, because I had to fly through Amsterdam. I don't want to fly to Holland without the dog on board." And the doors open, and the pilot says, "This plane will not leave the English airspace without the dog." And the head purser comes back to me with a picture of Bossum being loaded onto the plane. She said, "Your dog is on. Everything's fine. The door's sealed."
And
And
she made the flight just fine.
she made the flight just fine.
Yeah.
She got through customs without any problem. Took me
Yeah.
2 hours to get through customs at Dulles. I didn't have global entry 2 years ago when I brought her back, and but so she was just waiting for me in baggage claim when I got to Dulles, and so for her it was fine. For me it was close to a nervous breakdown of experience.
So you've owned three racers in England by yourself,
Mhm.
and we recently roped you into a syndicate, the Meteor Shower Syndicate that Michael's also a member of. We all own together 1/10 of a little bitch named Meteor Shower. She's
Mhm.
black with white ticks. How do you like syndication ownership now versus so far? Early
Well,
days, but how do you like that
yeah.
with individual ownership?
Well, one of the things that with dog ownership in England and Ireland, unless you have a dog that runs stakes races, you are going to lose money, and you're going to lose money every month. That just paying the feed bill is that just there's not enough money involved to be able to pay the feed bill for the dogs. Um, so you're sending a little bit of rent money every month, and so having only a 1/10 share of that the this coming month we'll probably owe £5 a piece, rather than 50 or 100. That's
Yeah.
kind of nice.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
but George also takes, he's sort of the lead on it and takes care of everything, and so that's nice too. And one of the and that's another interesting thing that's just a difference between England and Ireland in the U.S. I was, having had been a racing owner in the United States, you have to be a member of the NGA, and so
Yeah.
you have your NGA membership, and then you have to be licensed in the state. And so I remember my license in Kansas, I think, was $100. and would have been more, but I already had my fingerprints on file because I was already licensed in the state of Florida. So I had
Yeah.
my the FBI had my fingerprints on file because you have to be fingerprinted and a full background check, full criminal check run. And I think in Florida the license was only about $20, but you also had to pay for an FBI check and the fingerprinting. And so when Blossom first started in Ireland, I asked the breeder, so how, what kind of licensing do I have to get? Is it all through GRI, or is there a governmental organization that I have to do as well? Is it through ICC? What are you talking about? Like, well, I've got to be licensed, right? Like, no. Like, well, how do they know who I am? I put your name on the I put your name on the form. So it was
Pretty nice,
a bit
huh?
of a bit of a shock that lack of formality that exists in England and Ireland. Same thing in England. The
Yeah,
Greyhound
yeah.
Board of Great Britain. I think I had to send them a copy of my passport just to yes, I exist. But other
Yeah.
than that, no.
Right, right. Well, what do you think going forward? Are you going to remain an owner of British racing greyhounds?
I don't know. I don't know if I'll get another English or Irish dog or not. I have looked at a couple of American dogs. I had a very serious thought about a litter that's on the ground right now in Florida, taking a pup out of that. The two tracks in West Virginia are still they're paying considerable money, so the American pups do cost a good bit more, but you also are going to be able to make your money back if the dog's able to grade in. And right now there's a shortage of dogs, so I think getting dogs graded in is not going to be an issue. But how long those tracks are going to be open is an open question.
Yeah.
And I would like to be involved in racing in the U.S. again. I don't live too terribly I live in Northern Virginia, about 35 miles from the West Virginia border, and both of the tracks in West Virginia are on the other side of West Virginia. But still, I'd be able to go see my dog race. But now I see, yesterday I was or actually it was this morning, saw Dwayne and Snowy race back-to-back races actually, because you can get it on, you can watch the English races on the internet, so it would be nice to be able to see a dog see a dog live. So I don't know, and I've got a dog born in 21, 22, and 23, and I probably ought to wait and get a puppy born in 26. Give it a couple
Yeah.
get a couple of years buffer in there.
Yeah. Is it, you mentioned there's a shortage of greyhounds available for the two American tracks. Is it difficult at all if you have a dog that's been schooled and finished and so forth? Is it difficult to get a spot for them in a kennel, or is it relatively easy?
I think a lot of that is still who you know, and so the people that I've spoken with, the breeders that I've spoken with, I've specifically asked because the people that I knew in greyhound racing were Sonny Alderson, who's passed away quite a while ago, Jan Alderson, who's no longer with us, Paul Byther, Artis Reed, so Wayne Ward. That his daughter Julia is obviously still very much involved, but I don't know. I think I've spoken with Julia once in my life. So that was when I reapplied to re-up my membership for the NGA that I've been, I hadn't had a NGA membership in close to 20 years, and references, Jason Bloomfield, England, Rachel Wheeler, Ireland, Paul Byther, deceased. Jan Alderson, deceased. Artis Reed,
yeah.
deceased.
Right,
And but yeah, the talking to breeders, that's one of the questions that I had is, will you help me get a dog into the kennel? And everybody's been very gracious, and oh yeah, no problem. You were a friend of Paul's, you were a friend of Jan's. Yeah, if you know the names and if they'd vouch for you if you were here, you're good enough for us. So.
Yeah, that's great. What where do you think once Delaware North gets its way in West Virginia and it doesn't want to be in the greyhound racing business and it's allowed to decouple and finishes out live racing. What do you think? What's your crystal ball tell you? Will racing come back in some form in the U.S.?
That's I'm not sanguine about the prospects. And greyhound racing certainly, it makes money, and that's something that, as opposed to horse racing, and very few horse racing tracks are anywhere near break even. The Florida tracks are. I have friends who are in horse racing, and the Florida tracks, ever since dog racing was ended in Florida, things that the horse people didn't grasp that we kept telling them for 20 years. Dog racing supports horse racing in Florida. All those tax breaks that you get, that's because of the amount of money that the parimutuel commission is able to take in due to dog racing. But will dog racing make a comeback? And the economics of it are kind of difficult because with Delaware North, yes, they're making money, but Delaware North is a private equity company. Without getting too deep into the weeds of finance, and that is what I do for a living these days, without getting too deep in the weeds, the big thing that a private equity company wants to see is return on equity. They're not particularly concerned about overall profit. It's the return that they're getting on the amount of equity that they have invested. And the better their ROE numbers are, the more people they're able to get to invest in other ventures, in continuing ventures. So that's why they want to decouple from racing, and that's why Southland was making good money. But they were able to get that equity off of their books, and their ROE improves even though their overall profit decreases. But they get more investment because of that. It's kind of weird, but that's way that it is. Well, is anybody going to be able to start another track? And that's an open question, because a publicly traded company is not really going to be interested. And there are publicly traded casino companies, but they're not particularly interested because they can make more money spending their capital in the Far East. Yes, they can make money in the United States, but it's still a risky investment because it's so dependent upon the social capital that is generated. Can you stay in the good graces of the internet universe where in an age of information asymmetry, my misinformation on welfare and rehoming is more important than your lived experience because I have YouTube subscribers. And so generating the social capital, keeping the social capital so that you can continue to be profitable is one issue. But you're also dependent upon the caprice of a legislature. You spend $20 million opening a track, and you're open for one season, and you actually, break even on your operating expenses, and then the legislature comes into session and says, "No, we're not going to have dog racing anymore." And now you're stuck. So it's a difficult economic situation. But I hope that it would happen, that maybe something looking a little more like the provincial tracks in Ireland, where small breeders and owners can get together and have a meet and sure, why not? Have internet gaming, so have meets in the evening so you can show them in the morning in Macau and have a little bit of gaming revenue coming in. But I'm not sanguine about the prospects.
Yeah. Well, for now, we'll enjoy our young greyhound in England and watch her on the internet and hope that she does well. In the meantime, we have our greyhounds here at home to enjoy and take out for amateur sports. So long may we continue to be able to do that. Well, Harry, it's been a great conversation. Certainly appreciate your joining us. It's good to hear how somebody makes their journey in life to become a student of the breed. And I think you certainly qualify for that title. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll hope to have you back another time.
Yep. Thanks so much for having me on, John. I know a couple of things. I have some reasoned opinions, and I have a world of personal biases. And I hope that I have the good grace, and I hope that I've had the good grace tonight to distinguish between the three. So
very much so. All right, Greyhound lovers, thank you again for joining us for our 51st episode. And we'll see you again next time on the Greyhound Nation.
Thanks so much for listening to the show. If you're not a regular listener, be sure to follow Greyhound Nation wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on social media, Facebook and Instagram. Just search for Grey Nation Show, follow us, and you'll get a notification every time we release a new episode. You can also get new show notifications when you subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you like the episode, leave us a review on our Facebook page or your favorite podcast app. You can also send us feedback or questions via the contact form on our website at Greyhound.dog. That's greyhoundnation.dog. This episode was produced in collaboration with host John Parker. Our theme music was composed and performed by Dimitri Taurus. Our sincerest thanks go out to Harry Jennings for being a guest on the show. We look forward to hearing more about his adventures as a Greyhound man, particularly that British racing syndicate we're all in on with past guest George Sell. In the meantime, visit our website show notes for a link to that YouTube interview between John, Harry, and Clarissa Dixon-Wright at the 2000 Waterloo Cup. I'm Michael Burns, and you've been listening to Greyhound Nation.